So I'm going to introduce three amazing women. You will hear three stories, but there's one common denominator between all of them, and that is was their empowerment. I got to hear these stories just the other day, and really what I heard when I heard these stories was that each of these women, they did their research, they did their work, they did their spiritual, their physical, their emotional work before they gave birth, and this allowed them to know exactly what they wanted, but at the same time, they knew what they wanted, they prepared, but they let go, and they trusted, and they surrendered to the process, and that is what allowed them to experience the experience and know that whatever happened was meant to be. And so you'll get to hear that in all three of these stories. So I'm going to bring up first Joanne Woolley, and she's going to tell you an empowered hospital birth story at Scripps Memorial Hospital.
All right. Hi, my name is Joanne Woolley, and I'm going to share with you my empowered birth experience at Scripps Mercy Hospital. Just a little clarification. First, I want to give great gratitude to my birth team, Dr. Beekner and Dr. Riley. Those were my OBs, my doula, Pat Granadas, and my chiropractor, Dr. Carol Spiegelman, my acupuncturist, Jamie Boyd, my birth educator and lactation educator, Eve Moran. Some of you might have heard of or experienced her services at Milkmaid at Home, which is no longer here. She's retired, but she was a wonderful support system for me. My nurse that I only met right as I delivered my baby, but she played an integral role in my birth experience, Chris Day. And, oh yes, my husband. Through having an empowered birth experience, it shaped who I am as a mother and as a business owner, where I can continue to share my experiences, as it was from the willingness of other moms to share theirs that begins my story. I'll tell you a little about preconception, my experience through pregnancy, and I'll share my actual birth story. Before conception, I had no thought of having an unmedicated delivery. It hadn't even crossed my mind. A coworker of mine, Anita, pulled me aside one day. She knew that we were getting ready to have kids. Joanne, you're the type who would have a natural birth, right? Heck no! Those stories on TV scare me. She went into the story of her two sisters who had experienced epidurals in a hospital and did not plan for natural childbirth. For both of them, they experienced lifelong complications resulting in limited disability. I'd actually experienced something similar, but as a result of a car accident, something out of my power. So I thought about it after she explained that story to me, and I thought, I don't want to have any risks of having additional backaches and pains. I already had them every so often from a car accident. I couldn't imagine raising a family with some debilitating situation. So the seed had been planted, I guess you could say both figuratively and literally. Soon, we found out we were pregnant. In my pregnancy, Anita's story allowed me to begin researching natural birth instead of being dismissive of discussions that I saw online, and I actually listened with intentionality. My former boss and his wife had recently had a baby, so I asked them lots of questions. He'd go home, talk to his wife, get the answer, come back, deliver the information to me. And I really valued her information because she was a lawyer, so she was really smart. She knew how to do research. She was a bit crunchy. Before being a mom, I was not your crunchy style person. So it was the perfect mix for me. They had decided to deliver at the UCSD Birth Center. So I decided that's where I'm going to birth. My insurance informed me otherwise. They did not cover any midwife type of program, so that was out. So I thought that being pregnant was a life-changing event, so I called again. And I said, oh, you know that little disclosure you have about life-changing events? This should qualify. Well, you'll never change the process while you're pregnant. Trust us. Okay, I get it. So when I did see my primary physician and asked for a referral to an OB, she knew that I had wanted to deliver at the UCSD midwife program. So she referred me to Dr. Buechner and Dr. Riley, which was in Hillcrest, only a block away from her office. They are both lovingly referred to as sheep in wolf's clothing. In case you don't know, midwives are the sheep in this analogy. What I loved about Dr. Buechner is I never experienced unnecessary invasive cervix checks. Every time I would get the email from babycenter.com that told me what to expect at my next OB appointment, I thought, oh dear gosh, I am going to have to be ready for this. And I never had that unpleasant experience, which I thought was marvelous. She had great bedside manner. She always let the appointment run over, took as much time as I needed to ask her questions and really feel like I knew and I was comfortable with the answers. She was supportive of natural childbirth. She saw her role in being there for our health and safety. She talked to me in great detail about my birth plan and addressed my concerns on an episiotomy. That was one thing I was very fearful of. So we talked about it, and we agreed that should things start to tear in the wrong direction, we would let her intervene. If things were tearing where it was not a problem, we would let things occur naturally. So we were in agreement. Due to my medical history, there was a possibility that a C-section would be in my future. This started to upset me because I had already decided I was going to have a natural childbirth. She was great in advising me what I could do to avoid it, and that ultimately what I needed to do was be at peace with the health of a happy baby at the end of the experience. During my pregnancy, I joined one of those pregnancy message boards, which is great because I didn't have friends that were experiencing pregnancy with me. So this became my tribe. It was a place where I learned about doulas, which I'd never heard of before, birth plans, which I thought was very interesting, and red raspberry leaf tea. Eve Moran was perfectly located next door to my OB's office. The universe had aligned so I did not have to research a birth educator. Do you remember the boss's wife who was a lawyer that I stole the information from? I didn't want to do that much research. And she was also breastfeeding, had a breastfeeding class as well. The main thing I took away from my childbirth education class was her teaching of visualization. So that was what I used and what worked for me. She also said that whatever you want, not only in life, but what you want out of your birth, you need to announce it to the universe. Put it out there. I immediately determined that what I wanted was a low, painful birth, and I also wanted a short birth, or labor, rather, labor. I kept putting that message out there regularly. I think my husband got tired of me saying that message, but that's okay. I knew that a doula was exactly what I needed, someone to provide maternal advice and recommendations with no attached baggage. Some of us do not take advice from our mothers very well. I know I'm not alone in this. Eve referred me to a doula, Pat Granados. I have called that woman dozens of times, sometimes in the middle of the night when I was not in labor, and she has always welcomed my call. My youngest is now 3 years old, and I know that I can still pick up the phone and have a conversation with that woman. For me, that was what I needed in beginning a relationship with my doula. What I loved about her philosophy was that there was service after the close of the sale. I feel that she is an extended piece of our family. I want to share with you the recipe for the red raspberry leaf tea. If you don't have anything to write it down with, you can always see me after. But it was important for me as I feel like it helped me with my labor. It is 1 ounce of loose red raspberry leaf tea, 1 pint of boiling water. Pour water over the leaves, let it steep for 30 minutes, strain, and when labor starts, drink as hot as possible. I learned about this infusion recipe from the pregnancy board that I told you about. I had read many anecdotes on how it shortened labor and reduced pain. Those were the 2 things I'd been putting out there in the universe. That's what I wanted from my labor. That and a baby. Fast forward, September 28th, 2005. The Padres are in the playoffs. We had club-level seats, but something told me I wouldn't last through the game, so I opted not to go. I urged my husband, Corey, to go. You'll have your cell phone. I'll call you if anything happens. He forgot his cell phone. Luckily, we'd made friends with all the people around us in our seats. So halfway through the game, I get a phone call. He's just checking in on me. I tell him everything's fine, but I'm really glad I didn't go to the game because I feel like I need a bath to relieve the tightness that's all around my belly. For the last couple of days, I'd been experiencing what some refer to as early labor or prodromal labor pains. And when I had seen Pat just the day before, she'd actually stopped and talked to Amberly, my daughter, in utero, and said, since you've been giving mommy some of these extra labor pains, let's shoot for a labor that's only half the time. First-time laboring moms usually experience about 18 hours of labor. So we were aiming for 9 hours. That was now the goal. As I relaxed in the bath, I tell Amberly, we just need to get through the game. Then you can feel free to come. I did this. I watched the Padres win on television. Corey called, he was excited. I think he still didn't know the excitement that was coming. I told him he should come directly home. I told Amberly, all right, anytime you're ready. I had my first contraction minutes before Corey arrived home at 10:48 p.m. My contractions went from 10 minutes apart to 8 minutes apart, and as I scurried around putting last-minute things in my overnight bag, Corey kept remembering what our birth educator had referenced. Moms think it's all going to happen really quickly. First-time labors take an average of 18 hours. It's your job to make sure that she labors as much as possible at home if you're aiming for a natural childbirth. He felt like there was no hurry. In fact, he thought he could go to bed. I continued to track the progression of my labor contractions. When they got to be 5 minutes apart, I proceeded to go make the red raspberry leaf tea. Ultimately, at 6 a.m., so it was around 2 a.m. that I said I was ready to go to the hospital. I had been drinking my tea. He was still moving rather slowly. We arrived, my contractions continued, but were now at irregular intervals, and the pain was not intensifying. I was checked, and I was 2 centimeters. At 6 a.m., I was sent home for non-progressing labor. But this was perhaps the miracle in disguise. I had learned, again, at the hospital on the tour, that I should labor as much as possible at home if my aim was to have a natural childbirth. Well, we lived in Mission Valley. I birthed at Scripps Mercy on Washington Avenue. Anyone familiar with Washington Avenue? There are some serious potholes. Those sent me right into transition labor. I screamed at my husband to turn around and go home, or go to the hospital. We are not going home. He felt again that his job was to take me home and labor as long as possible at home. I knew what was happening for me. I knew that I was getting resistance from the hospital that sent me home, from my husband that wanted to still take me home, but I just trusted that everything would work out. I knew they thought I was crazy. I didn't know how I was going to make it up the stairs and get into the bath, but I did with his help. Then I realized that that bath was not helping me at all. When I got out of the bath, that's when I had the bloody show. All of a sudden, my husband turns into Mr. Hero. So off to the hospital we go. It's just before 8 o'clock when we arrive. So I'd been home for less than 2 hours. Labor at home for as long as possible. Our wonderful doula arrived. Luckily, Dr. Buechner is just across the way, not even a block from the hospital. So they both arrived at the same time. I had been checked and I was at 10 centimeters. I was pretty happy, but I knew I needed to check what station the baby's head was at. You start off at -1, then you get to -3, -2, -1, 0, then +1, +2, +3. +3 is when you're about to have your baby. So when she said that I was at +3, I clapped my hands and I was so excited, and all of my pain disappeared. I started to feel the urge to push. We realized that our cord blood banking kit was in the car. My doula, knowing that her job was to help us out in any way possible, volunteered to run to the car and get the cord blood banking kit. If you know any doulas, you know that they live for witnessing a birth. And I so appreciate that she was willing to do that. Because Dr. Buechner had said to us, if you send Corey, he will miss the birth. Well, sure enough, she was right. 3 pushes later, and Amberly, my beautiful baby girl, arrives. No episiotomy, no C-section. After Amberly got some oxygen, Dad got to hold her first. I was secretly sad about that, but it's okay. I had to get a couple of stitches. I told him about sticking out his tongue while he was holding her and to see what her reaction would be. And he's like, she did it back! So that started our early communication journey with our babies, is the fact that he learned he could communicate right from birth. He was amazed. I was in love. I trusted the process. I knew that what I was experiencing was the way that it was going to be, and to let go. In summary, even when those around you are not in line with what you know in your bones, keep trusting yourself. It is my body. It is, in fact, your life. I've used this experience of my daughter's birth as a model to keep forging ahead in the obstacles that pop up for me in life today. I know that I can overcome. I know what is to be. I know that when I tell my story, it makes a difference for others. Your knowing and choosing to be empowered in spite of circumstances will affect your birth story and who you are in this world. Thank you.